Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. Tonight we are hitting season 10 for our Fight Club. What were the essential episodes? Which ones could we forget about? And what do we agree on? What do we want to maybe friendly argue about? But before we get into all of those details, let my wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a fan since season 3. I started writing fanfic in 2012. You can find all those stories on AO3 under True, not under True. It was false, under Fire Sign 10. Starting the evening off with a bang.
Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I have a bad case of the giggles tonight, so I have no idea how this is going to go.
Elektra.
Hi, I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer, editor, and a lorophile. And I've been watching Supernatural since the very first episode. And I'm thrilled that we get to talk about season 10 tonight.
Nice. I'm Gail C. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, paranormal romance, male paranormal romance. I'm a huge Supernatural fan. Came in late, but made up for it with a bit of obsession. And I run the Supernatural TFWNC group as well as the Supernatural track here on Continual. So, season 10. Let's talk about favorite episodes, and we'll go from there. Elektra.
If we're going to go to favorite episodes, hands down, fan fiction. 200th episode. It has everything. It's got the great songs. It's got all those little touches that make everybody go, oh, they did that, didn't they? The beautiful rendition of Carry On My Wayward Son. People playing our favorite characters the way they should be played. Just somebody walking around going, idiots, idiots, idiot. Just the portrayals in it are fantastic. They managed to have a decent story wrapped around the whole thing. And of course, Chuck tiptoeing down in at the end and giving them, his blessing, as it were. I love the way the whole season is put together. Starting with Demon Dean and the whole Dean and Crowley partnership. And we're buds and we go out and we hang out together, and watching Crowley miss it. We have some of our fan favorite characters coming in. Rowena is one of my favorites. Charlie's one of my favorites, and winding it all up for that big bang at the end.
Okay. Melissa.
I think it's a really, really solid season with a lot of good episodes.
Yeah, I would agree. Melissa.
One of my favorites, Reichenbach, because there's this great, just in the beginning, there's this great juxtaposition between Cole and Sam, that fight, and Dean and the bouncer in the strip club. They cut that back and forth beautifully. I loved that scene. And then there's that parking lot fight with Dean and Cole. And this is Dean is just having a blast. He is having so much fun beating up on Cole. And I'm a sucker for any time Dean's having fun. I'm having fun. So that was one of my favorite episodes. It's not an essential episode, but it was fun.
Okay. Carole.
I have 2 favorites because that's how I roll. my first favorite is Hibbing 911, where we have Donna in her bubbly best and softening up stoic, Jody Mills, who's like, doesn't think she wants to be there, but then they bond. Donna finds out the truth. There's a lot of humor. It's a good case. It's just, I love that episode. And my second would be About a Boy, when we have de-aged Dean, which launched a whole new trope of fanfic, okay? And was just freaking adorable. And is the same actor as in the one at Sunny's Place. It's the same actor who had played Dean. And he's marvelous because there he was playing a young Dean. Here he's playing current Dean in a young body. And he's delightful. You know, we've got Taylor Swift and there's no grass in the infield. And it's just freaking adorable. And those are my two fun favorites.
And gee, sir, your son is so polite. And the look on his face. Well, you've named a lot of my favorites, but I also like Ask Jeeves because
that would have been my third.
it's just a fun Monster of the Week episode. And it had a twist to it. And Sam gets felt up by cougars. And it's just, there's a lot going on there, and it's a fun episode. The other one that I liked because, well, I liked the Werther Project because that was a very dark episode, but it was also just a fascinating Monster of the Week. And then seeing Dean come and say, well, they never said it had to come, all the blood had to come from one legacy, and saving Sam's life and all of that the kind of twist there, that was all great. But I also really loved Dean with the mark of Cain in Dark Dynasty and just slaying the Steins who had it coming. Now, I still feel a little queasy about the youngest with the glasses who might have been saved, but I get where Dean was coming from. But, you know, I felt for that kid. I think the Steins would have been an interesting enemy to have had a little longer because there was a lot there we kind of could have explored, and we already hated them for what they did to Charlie. But seeing them get their comeuppance over all of that arrogance, and it only took one mark of Cain, Dean Winchester, to take them all out, that was fun. So how about the episodes you didn't care for or that left you meh? Melissa? Can't hear you.
Technology tonight is not my fan. Ask Jeeves was one of the ones that I was like, there were a few funny moments, but that was one of those ones that I tend to watch on fast forward, get to the funny part, watch the funny part, fast forward. And that moon and the moon thing, but I bet Carol's going to mention it, so I'm going to stop.
You know me so well.
All right, Carol?
Paper Moon. I didn't like Bitten to begin with, didn't like the chick in Bitten, and to have her back and then have her sister, and it was just like, thank you, Elektra. It just was like, this did not need to happen. And she got a second bye. She got to walk again. And I'm not saying they should have killed her, but come on, who gets the first bye? And she got two. Yeah, I wasn't having any of that. I also was not wild about the things we left behind. I'm not a big Claire fan. It was just like, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Elektra?
Yeah, unfortunately, Carole got me there. Those are the ones that, out of all of them, I really didn't care for. Particularly Paper Moon. I was really not happy about that. That just didn't need to happen. It left me kind of cold. But
okay. I think for me, it was any episode with Claire in it. I'm just not a Claire fan. And I think that character had so much promise. Obviously, the actress is very talented, but they kind of like what they realized they did in hindsight to Bella. They wrote her as so unlikable that it was really hard to salvage that. And I don't think it had to be that way. I've raised 2 teenage girls. They're not necessarily like that. Claire could have been smart and still been sarcastic and edgy, and Lord knows, like everybody else in the show, she needed therapy. But she just took it that much further to be nasty. And I don't mean that in any of the connotative ways. I just mean mean girl. And it was really hard for me to ever come back from that.
They don't seem to be very good at writing girls or even women. I mean, the show is mostly guys.
They're worse at girls than they were with women.
Although they do a fantastic job of writing Rowena. But Rowena is at base, you know, she's evil and enjoys it. And maybe that's easy to write.
Yeah. Yeah, Donna and Jody, they got right, but
Yeah.
so many of the others, they really didn't, because they made the same mistake with Mary in terms of, in my opinion, making her hard to like.
Yeah.
Going
Well, and they give the women from the British men of letters have no redeeming qualities at all, so you can't find anything to like about them.
Right.
So
it's a redemption arc.
They're just not that great. I mean, they got lucky a couple times, but and when they did it right, you got Charlie, and you know, when they were right, they were good.
Charlie and Jody and Donna, you know, they got right, but I agree. So many times they didn't.
And Dorothy, they did a great job with Dorothy. But when they did it wrong, it just the character's great on you. I mean, they didn't do a terrific job with Alex either. She they managed to kind of rewrite her history. By the time you hit Wayward Sisters, she's a completely different person than she is in Alex, Alexis, Annie, whatever that episode is. She's extremely unlikable in that episode.
Yeah, and Kaya and Patience kind of were wallpaper. There wasn't enough there to get a feel for. But back to season 10.
Back to season 10.
What about the essential episodes? What is the arc for season 10, and which episodes were essential for it? Carole?
Well, the arc is clearly the mark of Cain. So Dean has the mark of Cain. They have the first blade, so everything's lined up for him to use it as needed. And so what we're watching throughout the season is Dean's moral degeneration, really, as the mark eats at his soul and eats at his intrinsic human goodness. He started the season as a demon, and the great fear is that he will end the season as a demon because of the mark's effect on him. And we see numerous episodes that have moments where we are seeing this decay happening, where he's goes on a killing spree and Sam's looking at him beggingly saying, please tell me you had to massacre them like this because you had to. Or, you know, where he says the most cutting thing he ever says in the entire 15 years to Sam as they watch Charlie's body on the fire, and he says to Sam, that should be you. And that's just a remark that was stunning at the first viewing, and there's just no way in any world where Dean would ever have said that to Sam. And we know it's the mark. It's the mark is corrupting him. And it starts off slower and it's picking up pace. And that's what drives Sam to do the unfortunately catastrophic event of dealing with the Book of the Damned. So the arc is the mark of Cain. There's some great standalones. There are a lot of the episodes, really nice, solid episodes. I think I agree with Elektra. I think this is a strong season. And there's very little like nothing really boring. There's a couple of episodes we didn't care for, but everything else is really nice and tight, and a lot of suspense, a lot of action, a lot of heart and emotion. Dean is fighting it himself. He's not going down willingly. He's fighting this, but it's too strong. It's just too strong. And so watching all of that is just certainly very tough. Watching Sam, see what's going on. And we have a side arc of Castiel, and he's getting his grace back, and and we have Hannah, and I like Hannah, but to me, that whole side story just did not have the snap and sparkle of watching the Winchesters dealing with the mark of Cain. So kind of those were the points where I'd be like, okay, I have to get a snack now.
Okay,
And I have it on so I can listen, but
don't forget though, the other side story going on with the Mark of Cain was Crowley, where Crowley went from being more of an antagonist to being their
frenemy.
Yeah, their frenemy. That's a good word
Absolutely.
for it. He was in there helping them with it. I will take the first blade until we need it, and you let me know, and I'll be there. Just call me. He was there being Dean's buddy, feeding him demons to kill, or bad people to kill, to feed the mark.
And then he mourns,
kill his friends.
and then he mourns Dean. When he loses Dean, he actually mourns. He's a
depressed.
sad little puppy. And that's perfect for then Rowena to come in and castigate him for being a weenie,
But he's also the one who gives stolen grace to Cass, who isn't ready to take somebody else's grace, no matter how bad they are.
Good point.
And I also, I'll footnote my last thing in general about this is that I absolutely love Rowena. I love her.
Yes.
And she's here. She's unabashedly evil. She is out for herself. She could give, a rat's ass about anybody else. In fact, even with Crowley, she has no true maternal love for him. He is yet another tool. And because he's her son, she has extra hooks in him to try and manipulate him. And man, Ruth Connell, she just takes that bit and she runs with it. And
every episode with her is
every episode. Yeah.
Honestly.
And so that's why I certainly, any scene with Rowena and or Crowley also has that snap and pizzazz, because they're just both such terrific performers.
Okay, Melissa?
Well, first, because yes. One of the, to me, essentials, it's not essential to the story arc, but I think if you're a fan of film, it's essential, is Soul Survivor, because that whole iconic, they were so plugging into The Shining when Dean is chasing Sam through the bunker with the axe, and it breaks down the door. It's just, that whole piece is just a love song to The Shining, and it's one of those moments that you don't want to miss. It's just, that's the episode when I'm doing my rewatch and I get to this episode, it's like, okay, the dog gets a chew toy so that she can leave me alone for 45 minutes because I don't want to stop anything. So that's one of my, it's essential for me to watch when I'm rewatching this season.
I agree with everything everybody said. I did have a crucial pet peeve with what happened to Charlie, and I'm certainly not alone on that, but I hate forced errors and lazy writing. And Charlie was smart enough to stay off the grid with the Leviathans. She eluded Dick Roman. She was in a bunker with Rowena. And so all of a sudden, and the dungeon they're in is huge. Why she would leave that protected place with an angel and a witch to go to a hotel, park in front of her room, sit in front of a window when she knows they're people trying to kill her. She wouldn't. She just wouldn't have. And so if they wanted to get to the same end, they could have done it in a way that didn't make the character do stupid things to get there. And I don't think they needed to kill her. It's a bury your gays trope. Supernatural did a little too much of that, way too much of it. I think they could have accommodated Felicia Day's busy schedule by sending her off back to Oz if they hadn't killed off Dorothy. Having her do other things, but they didn't have to kill her for her to be gone a lot of the time. And so that's kind of my pet peeve with the season, as well as Cole, who really should have died. I'm
She
sorry.
could have
have
gone
swapped that.
anywhere.
They could have swapped that. Kill Cole, not Charlie.
Right.
They'd be much happier.
And I know Dean got to give that impassioned speech about, I know how my story ends, and you know, there's that whole brother moment. But I'm sorry, Cole hurt Sammy, and Cole needs to die. So that bothered me because I thought that was out of character for Dean. Even
Didn't he
if
have
he's
a
feeling
kid?
guilty.
Didn't he have a significant other and a little kid?
Cole did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's why Dean didn't take him out. I think there was a small child involved.
Well,
And I think they,
Dean was feeling a lot of guilt at that point also, but in my book, Cole just still should have. The kid would grow up much
But there
better.
were super easy ways to deal with putting Charlie off screen.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought in Mom, didn't know what to do with her, and sent her off in a cabin with alternate world Bobby for months. There are very easy ways to, you know, she could have said, just, I need a break from all this crap.
They could have sent her.
I'm going to,
Yeah.
you know.
They could have sent her to the Vatican to study or something.
I was just gonna say, they could have sent her off on a
Canada for a
research
while.
thing. It's not like she was in every episode anyway. She was always a side character, so they could have done any number of things to accommodate the schedule, especially when they brought alternate universe Charlie back anyway.
Yeah. So
That's what was really annoying to
started
me.
this whole series was me doing a series of articles for the Supernatural TFWNC site and the Winchester Family Business blog on Entertainment Weekly's take on the essential 75 episodes for the first 14 seasons. And so let's look at, and then I disagreed or agreed, mostly disagreed. So what did Entertainment Weekly think were the essential episodes?
There
Soul
were a lot
Survivor.
this season.
Huh?
There were
There
a
should have
lot,
been a lot,
this
but I think
season.
they picked about 5. So Soul Survivor, which is Sam trying to get Dean not to be a demon, fan fiction. The Executioner's Song, which introduces Cain, and that one I got to give them, as well as Soul Survivor. Dark Dynasty, which we've mentioned. The Prisoner, which is actually, I misspoke before, that's the one where Charlie dies. Dark Dynasty introduces the Steins. And Brother's Keeper, which is the last episode of the season where Dean is ready to kill Sam and go into the empty with death, and then Sam's puppy dog eyes to the rescue, changes everything. Rowena gets rid of the mark and the darkness rises. What do you think about that short list of essential episodes? What would you put on it? What would you take off? What do you think?
Well, Brother's Keeper is a killer. I mean, there's so much stuff in there, and that changes the mythos. Much as I adore that version of death, the discovery that death, in fact, who they're presenting as a primordial being, can be killed. And then they played with that so much for the remaining seasons. The idea that death, well, they were killing him every other week. Pretty much.
Yeah.
This is huge. And the setup for the next season, after Death explains about the darkness and that the mark of Cain is the first curse. And you can't just get rid of it. You have to give it to someone or the darkness will be released. And it took everybody to lock it up the first time. And Dean's like, well, okay, fine, we'll release it, no problem.
I personally would switch fan fiction with Black. Fan fiction's fun, but I think it's fun, not essential to the storyline.
It's fan service.
It's fan service.
Yeah.
And so by all means enjoy it, but I don't think it's crucial. Whereas in Black, we're setting up the whole season. We need that because Dean's a demon and we need to see him. We saw him wake up as a demon, but we didn't see him be a demon. We need to see him being a demon. We need to see Sam hunting him and going to new lows for himself in order to search for his brother. We need to see that Castiel is stripped of his grace, you know, and that his struggle through the whole season is to get some grace back so that he can
set up Cole in that episode too.
Yeah, so they can get his grace back so that he can help them with all of this. So I feel if you don't have Black, you don't have the pieces in place for the rest of the season. Versus fan fiction, like we said, great, but you know, not crucial. I think one of the things that's really striking about this season's flow is the way that the last 3 episodes are all so tightly boom, 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 and build to such a crescendo.
Well, and coming up, the first couple of episodes of season 11 are really, really tight to the arc as well.
But just
the
in terms
introduction of the darkness are very tight.
Yes, but in just in terms of this season ending, we've had other seasons that had great finales, but whether it led up to it so strongly was not as much of an issue. Whereas here we hit Dark Dynasty, man, they do not let us go until, you know, that smoke is coming out of the ground and the boys are in baby thinking, what the hell is going on, you know? So the build of episode, you know, 21, 22.
We really didn't know.
Really?
I mean, that first time you see them with the smoke coming up, you're wondering what the hell are they going to even survive this?
Absolutely.
Well, okay, are they going to live through it? I mean, we know they'll be back.
Right. They'd already been
died
renewed, so they have
before.
to come back.
They've died before. It could have happened again.
Absolutely. So I think that's a really interesting hallmark in this season. But yeah, I would include Black, and the rest of them I thought were great, you know, choices in terms of Executioner's Song. We see Dean devastated. Everyone's like, yay, Cain's dead. And Dean's like, oh my God, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
You know, and Timothy Amundsen, man, he killed that role. He killed it. He was so striking and strong, and you know, and he didn't do it by throwing his weight around or yelling or even ever raising his voice. He was stellar in that role.
Presence.
Yeah.
Great
He
presence.
had stage presence.
Oh, yeah, in spades. Yeah. Melissa?
I would throw out the fan fiction episode. It's a fun episode, but I don't need it to see the story arc. And I would like Carole said, the last 3 episodes, I think you need those, because you see the progression of how Dean is losing his grip on his fight against the Mark. And you have to have those 3 to understand how he can get to the place where he cooks dinner for Death. He makes treats. He cooks for Death, brings him there, says, I want to die. And Death convinces him that the only way that this is going to happen to take the Mark off the playing field is to kill Sam. That wouldn't happen after Black. You have to have that build at the very end of the season where you really see Dean's hanging on by just his fingernails, that he gets to a place where he's so desperate and the Mark has so much consumed him that he's willing to consider sacrificing his brother.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this season, if you don't have all those 3 episodes, I think then you get to the final episode and you're kind of like, wait, what? That doesn't really sound right.
Well, and I think one of the other things that kind of comes to fruition that was seeded earlier is, as much as I don't like the season 8 purgatory arc for Sam, hit a dog, met a girl, didn't hunt for didn't hunt for Dean.
Maybe
Which,
could have hit the girl and met a dog.
yes, that would have worked so much better. Especially with Amelia, I'm on board for that. But because Sam had such consuming guilt over failing Dean, and Dean didn't let him forget it, when Dean becomes a demon and gets the mark of Cain, absolutely nothing is going to get in Sam's way. If he needs to bully somebody into selling their soul, he'll do it. Whatever he needs to do, and this is another Sam burns down the world thing, but we see how ruthless Sam can be when Dean's on the line. And without that guilt from season 8, carry it forward a couple of seasons, I don't think we'd have understood Sam's dark side and just how far he was willing to go. Because there's a parallel conversation. You know, he asks Dean, tell me that you needed to kill them. Tell me that you had to do it. But there's a conversation later when Dean finds out just how far Sam went, where Dean tries the same sort of thing. And Sam says, no, I wasn't failing you again. And I think that puts it squarely back on Dean that you kind of created this monster.
Look at the acceleration here. They're both starting to push, even in service to each other, to do things that are a bit more extreme and to be willing to do more. I mean, they've already saved the world, and now we're seeing what they're willing to do to save each other. And, you know, and next season after this one, they're going to be fighting against the darkness and trying to bottle up a primordial force. So
We just have to remember, though, at this point, we don't know that.
right.
Just operating on this
But
season
with the
alone.
benefit of hindsight, we can look and see
Right.
that the
Right.
build of this season
Right.
is to show us that there's more to these guys, and they're not just beating up a bunch of guys in a bar anymore, or taking out, you know, a vampire or a nest.
Right.
That they're making the hard choices.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more ruthlessness and a little bit more gumption to them than there used to be. I mean,
And
they've
that's-
grown.
Part of the spell to remove the mark from Dean's arm is Rowena has to sacrifice something or someone that she loves. And it's very clear it's a person. She's got to love someone. Now, Sam's not there when they do that piece of the spell, but Sam knows that someone's going to have to be sacrificed. And he doesn't care. He doesn't argue. He doesn't question. He doesn't think about it. He's just like, do it. They knew it wasn't going to be Crowley. So Sam just did not even bat an eye. So it comes back to what Gail says all the time. Dean's willing to sacrifice himself. Sam is willing to burn down the world for his
And
cause.
that's something they establish immediately. That's another key thing I think we see in Black. We see immediately that Sam has, you know, no more restrictions. You know, he does not care that he is torturing a demon. He doesn't care about any of these things he's doing right off the bat. And so they establish from the get-go that here's the lengths Sam's ready to go. There's no more Mr. Nice Sam.
Go back to, go ahead. I go back to Gabriel in Mystery Spot, who said, whoever thinks Dean is the dysfunctional one has never seen you with a pointy object in your hand.
Right. And here it is, you know, in black and white, we see, you know, just as we see Dean as his demon self, we see Sam getting out that knife and carving. And that's a big shocker. But it lays that groundwork for him to then go to all of these lengths, like you say, where he doesn't care Rowena is going to kill an innocent. That innocent is not as important as Dean to him.
I always thought that Black was about Dean and his darkness. He's got the mark of Cain and he's a demon. He's not really, I mean, he is responsible, but he's not responsible. You kind of make the hedge. Sam's not under any demon blood. Sam's not under any mark. And so when you were talking, it just kind of occurred to me, the Black in that episode that they're referencing, it's not Dean, it's Sam. Sam has completely thrown everything aside because he's going to do whatever he can do for his brother.
Sam has
Well-
left the reservation.
And Supernatural loves its mirrors. So we got Soulless Sam in season 6, who couldn't tell right from wrong and didn't really care, and didn't really want his soul back. He was free of the weight and the obligation of being a Winchester. And Dean fought to get Sam's soul back, whether Sam wanted it or not, even if it killed him. And now we have the reverse of that, with Dean being a demon, having the mark of Cain, and being free of all of the worry and the morality and the guilt of Dean Winchester, and the weight it takes off his shoulders when he's palling around with Crowley and drinking the drinks with the umbrellas in them, and just he's having
Singing bad
fun.
karaoke and
And karaoke.
Yeah,
That was
really
priceless.
bad karaoke. So we have a mirror going there, and I think this is why fan fiction really likes to team up Soulless Sam and Demon Dean
okay.
and just sort of let them loose.
Something else to call attention to. I know all of the series is like this, but the episode titles this season were even better than usual. I mean, they've got an episode called Reichenbach, for Christ's sake.
Hmm.
They nailed the episode names.
And that,
I was just so impressed. Every one of them is just one after another.
mhm. And when you're looking at the upcoming episodes and you're looking at Reichenbach and you're saying, how on earth, I get the reference, I get the Sherlock reference, how is this going to work? And then you watch the episode and you go, oh, damn, that was good. Yeah,
Who's coming back from the depths?
right,
Mhm.
right. And I want to go back to About a Boy. I loved that episode because I thought it was just so clever. Not only the interplay between Sam and Dean, because all of a sudden Sam's the older brother, and he doesn't really quite know how to handle this. And it does make you wonder what some of the conversations were when Sam was going through puberty with Dean, because I think Dean would have been a little less fazed by Sam's questions than Sam was with me. It's up, it's down, it's up.
That was priceless. That was a moment where I'm just like, I can't believe they really did that. I can't believe they really wrote that.
Or
But
going
it was
through the
great.
window. Or going through the window into the basement.
Oh my God. And wasn't there something about underoos at some point?
Yes.
Well, that's something about
There
under, but they're going to go through that
Yeah.
skinny little window, and he says, "You're going to have to do it. I won't fit in there." And Dean says, "Not the first time someone said that." Coming out of a
Oh
14-year-old.
my God, it was so good. And this is where that actor, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't, Dylan something, the actor, and
Yeah,
his
yeah.
delivery was priceless. His delivery was so fluid, and he just like zapped those out just as you would imagine Dean saying. And we believed it so wholeheartedly because he embodied Dean so well.
Well, you gotta
And that-
wonder if the writers saw how well he did the last time and said, we got to do an episode like that.
Yeah.
Well, and
Wouldn't be the
the
first time.
choice that Dean had to stay that way and be rid of the
Right.
mark. And then the girl decided she needed a do-over. 3 husbands and you know, all the problems she had, maybe this time she could get it right. And I thought that was a real interesting twist of not automatically having to put people back the way they were.
Mhm.
That she really did get a do-over. But of course, Dean gave his up to save Sam.
Mhm.
So there was a
Oh,
lot
yes.
more to that episode
Yeah.
when you look at it than just, oh, let's do Hansel and Gretel.
And it was an interesting Hansel and Gretel, though.
Mhm.
It wasn't a Disney-fied. It was truly back towards the original Brothers Grimm, where it was grim and it was dark and it was. I
Ugly.
loved that. Yeah.
Mhm. And another, you know, again with they cast such wonderful people in the characters. The woman who played the witch was fantastic.
Mm.
You know, she was everything you'd want in that kind of
Yes.
witchy role. They really cast their nets well, and come up with some great character actors to flesh out these parts. So
And
because she wasn't how she was, we couldn't have believed the risk they really found themselves in. But
Mhm.
And this episode shows the beauty of, Gail, you talk about it a lot. You can fix something in writing with a simple line or two. You know, we've got this whole, the whole thing was DH Dean and ha 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 and Hansel and Gretel and ha ha ha. But then we find out that she's there because of the coven. She's after Rowena. And so this is one of those pieces where they just threw in a line. It's sort of almost a throwaway. I don't know how many people even catch it, but you realize, oh, wait a minute, they're tying this episode that seems to be like a monster of the week to what's going on with the rest of the season. And on the rewatch, I caught it and I was like, that's what Gail's talking about all the time, about how you can fix something or improve something by just throwing in a line or two.
Mhm. Elektra, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I'm glad you brought in the piece about the Grand Coven, because that's a continuing line throughout this whole Rowena's whole story, is her feud with the Grand Coven. And
her
how
desire
she
to
wanted
create
to be a witch, and they kept telling her she couldn't do it, and she's the little witch that could.
Mhm.
And everything ties back to her later. I mean, she comes up in the most interesting of places, and she's got relationships with everybody. But one of the things I like about this season is, as we're picking out the ones we think are the most important, some of the most, I don't know, fun episodes, I thought the ones that really shone for me, like fan fiction and Hibbing 911, weren't really necessary for the through line. They were just ones I really loved. And, I love that Jody got to meet Donna. Well, we weren't watching what was going on with the Mark of Cain necessarily, but I really wanted those two to get together. So
I wanted to see Kathleen from the Benders if she hadn't already left law enforcement, which I wouldn't blame her, because the Benders happened in Hibbing. So where was Kathleen? I would have loved to have seen her connect with Donna and Jody and find out that those guys she helped rescue were so much more than she thought they were. Oh yeah, those guys, they saved the world.
she left
And there's your wayward sisters.
She left the police department and she moved to DC and joined NCIS.
That could be.
She had a recurring role on that.
Yeah, I agree. Any other last words or things we haven't talked about? Because as usual, we've blown through the time. One thing I'd say is season 10 is when I really start getting tired of the Angel arc, and it keeps going. Every season, it's like, aren't they done yet? Haven't they run out of them yet? You mean there are some of them still left? That was an arc, a storyline that I thought went on way too long.
Well,
and yeah.
I'll point out that I'm glad that the whole thing with the Steins didn't last any longer than it did, because I got tired of them in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
They
enough.
were not my favorite villain.
No, but they at least had some menacing aspects. I kind of liked the whole, they were so laid back, but
Yeah, we invite people to come up and have their eyes checked, and we remove their eyes and bring them to Grandpa. Yeah.
I concur about the Angel thing. I was kind of ready to see it. And as much as I enjoyed Metatron in his own right as a villain last season, I felt like here he was kind of toothless. And, what was creepily entertaining last season because he's so not visually a villain. I mean, he's not the kind of presence you expect a villain to be, but he was still very villainous. And here he was just kind of like, yeah, here he is. Get him out of jail, whatever, cast his grace, whatever.
Well, folks, we have blown through our time again. So as we wrap up here, let's let everybody go around and say where people can find you, and starting with Elektra.
You can find everything you want to know about me at untilmidnight.com. There it is.
Okay, Melissa?
You can find me stalking the Supernatural TFWNC Facebook group that Gail runs.
And Carole?
I'm on Twitter as true_firesign10. All of my fiction is on AO3 under firesign10. And I'm also here on the TFWNC group and many times on Continual.
And I'm easy to find as Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce, both the .com and all of my social media. I'm in the Supernatural TFWNC group, but mostly I'm here on Continual. So thank you so much for our wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.